From Justice League's constant reshooting to poor Native American representation in The Lone Ranger, these movies just didn't match the hype surrounding them. Here are a few overhyped movies that completely flopped. Starting with Justice League. This should have been a big hit at the movies in 2017. Sure, Dawn of Justice didn't do as well as expected the year before, since it was the first time the two main characters appeared on screen together. However, Justice League got the whole gang together. Unfortunately, problems started coming up a long time before the movie came out. Director Zack Snyder unexpectedly left the project, which led to Joss Whedon stepping in and reshooting more than half of the movie. And he changed the story a lot. The movie is said to have cost $300 million to make, and some say the real number is much higher than that. With a big advertising effort, the movie would have needed to make $1 billion around the world just to break even. Still, for a movie that was so hyped, making only $658 million at the box office was a major flop. This failure caused the DC Extended Universe to make some huge changes. Since then, fans have been asking for Snyder's version of the movie to be shared, which seems very unlikely to ever happen. Now, if you're a fan of Stephen King, the next one will leave you extremely disappointed. The Dark Tower was based on a novel by King. Given the expectations from this award-winning author, we all knew that it was always going to be hard to adapt to the big screen. I mean, this is the king of horror we're talking about here. Universal Pictures and Warner Brothers worked on different versions of the project for years. At different times, J.J. Abrams and Ron Howard were linked as directors, and for a while it looked like this mind-blowing film would be made up of several movies and a TV show. It's not that easy to capture all that greatness in one film, but in 2015, Sony Pictures decided to make The Dark Tower into a single feature picture. All of us were wondering what exactly they had in mind. Would they really be able to do King's novel justice? Sadly, they didn't. Even though the marketing campaign was interesting and focused on how iconic Idris Elba was in the lead role of Roland Deschain, the film didn't do well because everyone heard that it was just as jumbled and confusing as King fans hoped it wouldn't be. The film had a budget of $66 million, but it only made $113 million at the world box office. This meant that Sony would lose a lot of money on the movie, and the planned sequel would never be made. And I think we can say the same for John Carter. This movie was supposed to be a blockbuster hit, with a budget of over $250 million and a marketing campaign that had everyone talking. The story really couldn't have been done well until CGI and huge costs came along. Published at the beginning of the 20th century, the books are about a Civil War veteran named John Carter, who's taken to Mars and gets mixed up in a fight between the people who live there over stealing their resources. The series influenced a lot of science fiction books that came after it, and Disney's 2012 movie version of the first book, A Princess on Mars, could have been the start of a money-making brand if it had been done right. Let's be real, the movie itself isn't bad, but a big part of the problem was how much it was pushed. The action-packed but plotless trailers told us nothing about the plot or why it was worth the hype. Renaming the movie John Carter was the first straw in making it completely forgettable. And star Taylor Kitsch was the opposite of a box office draw. It was the one time that Disney's powerful marketing machine completely failed them. The $250 million movie only made $284 million worldwide, making it one of the biggest flops of all time. After marketing costs, most estimates put Disney's loss at around $200 million. A movie having a big budget doesn't solve its problems, just like we saw with Shazam 2. The first movie was a surprise hit, with its blend of superhero action and humor winning over audiences, but the sequel was hyped up to be even bigger and better, with promises of more action, more laughs, and a bigger budget. Unfortunately, when the movie finally hit theaters, let's just say that it could have been way better. The jokes fell flat, the action was lackluster, and even the legendary performances of the cast couldn't save it from being a disappointment. But it's not just big-budget movies that can fall victim to overhyping. Take Black Adam, for example. The hype for this movie was off the charts. Dwayne Johnson as the lead, a dark and gritty storyline, and the promise of epic battles. but it's on this list for a reason. Critics panned the film and it struggled to make back its budget. So what went wrong? Well, it seems like the filmmakers got too caught up in trying to make it an action-packed blockbuster and forgot to develop the characters and story properly. This failed to give proper substance to the story and didn't give it the same vibe that we were expecting. If they couldn't do justice to The Rock, then it's understandable how they failed to do the same for Chris Hemsworth. Fans of the original Men in Black International trilogy were pumped to see the Thor actor and Tessa Thompson take on the iconic roles of Agent H and M. But unfortunately, the movie fell flat with critics and audiences alike, grossing only $253 million worldwide, a far cry from its massive $110 million budget. And there wasn't just one thing that they went wrong with. Even the chemistry between the two leads seemed a little forced, which was surprising. And where do I even start with the jokes? I could predict almost all of them. They needed to step up their game for sure. And it's not just these corporate action films that have the potential to fail, even countryside action isn't spared. Yes, guys, I'm talking about The Lone Ranger. Disney had high hopes for its Western action-adventure film starring Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp, but despite a massive $225 million budget, the movie only managed to pull in $260 million at the box office. Critics panned the film for its convoluted plot and cultural insensitivity, making it one of the biggest flops in recent memory. Some critics pointed to the film's lack of originality, noting that it felt like a poor imitation of other successful Western films. Others criticized the film's portrayal of Native Americans, arguing that it perpetuated harmful stereotypes and was culturally insensitive. Whatever the reason, The Lone Ranger was a massive flop that left Disney reeling. But hey, at least we got a killer soundtrack out of it, right? Now, this list wouldn't be complete if we forgot Solo, a Star Wars story. I mean, come on. This is a Star Wars production we're talking about, so the overhyping was a given. When news broke that we were getting a standalone movie about Han Solo, we were ecstatic. But when the movie was released, it wasn't even close to what we expected. Despite the talented cast and impressive visuals, the movie fell flat and forgettable. It seemed like the filmmakers were trying too hard to fill in the gaps with Han's backstory rather than creating a compelling standalone adventure. Who knows? If they get another chance at it, they might still make up for where they went wrong here. That's all the flop movies for today.